back to another evening in the Stormcave, where stories live and breathe and where family memories centered around sharing those stories together are cherished. I'm your host, Grant Walker, and I'm here with my co-host, Jenelle Schmidt, and we have a really special evening planned for us tonight with a really special guest. Jenelle, how you doing? And then when you get a chance, go ahead and introduce our special guest tonight.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm enjoying the warmer weather. We're all ready for spring over here. And I'm so excited that our guest today with us is Benjamin Fife. He is an audiobook narrator, and specifically, he has narrated about 10 of my books now. I think that's the right number. I keep losing track of how many books I've written. But yeah,
Yep.
so hi, Benjamin. Thanks for being with us. You want to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Hi. Sure. Hi, I'm Benjamin Fife, and my internet connection is unstable.
It's all
But
good.
I'm an audiobook narrator, and I've been doing this since 2018. I started working with Jenelle, I think 2020.
Yeah.
And I've loved the books I've narrated with her. I've narrated over 250 books so far, and I generally am trying to churn out about 50 a year, give or take. But it's always fun to come back to a series or even just a particular writer's voice that I'm familiar with. And so I just finished narrating the fifth book in Jenelle's Turrim Archive, and actually I finished reading it to my kids a few days before I finished narrating it. So
Oh, that's incredible. What I really wanted to do, Benjamin, is, and I've got many questions, but to kind of to help introduce you, I wanted to play a clip of some of the work that you've done on Janelle's series, and I think that's a great segue into. I'm going to play a little clip here, and Janelle, go ahead and introduce this clip. But we're going to do it from this book that you've just finished, but it's not been released yet. So this will also serve as a little bit of a teaser for the fifth and final book in the Turrim Archive series. But I want to play just a little clip to help introduce our audience, anyone who may not be familiar with your work. And Janelle, go ahead and introduce this clip for us.
Well, I don't know that I can introduce it any better than you just did, but this is a bit from the first chapter of the last book in the Turrim Archive, which is a gas lamp fantasy series with it's steampunk with airships and pirates and robots and paratroopers and a wizard and a quest and a war, and it refused to stay in a box, so it's just all the genres. But I just really enjoyed how much Benjamin brings the story to new life with his voice. So we'll just play a little teaser clip from the first chapter here for you, and I hope you enjoy it.
The Valdeon hawk veered to port, nearly throwing Graydon off his feet. A blast of fire lanced through the air off their starboard side, so close he could feel the heat radiating from it. Rain poured down, making the deck of the airship slick and slippery under his boots. He was grateful for the lifeline clipped to his belt. Through rain-spattered goggles, he peered at their pursuer, a shadowy ghost sidling through the dark clouds behind them. Despite the fact that every shot of the cinder blast threw their enemy back, their opponent's airship had enough speed to keep pace with the nimble hawk, while staying out of range of their crossbows and hand cannons. Graydon wished Wynne had fitted the hawk with a cinder blast of their own, but Wynne said the technology hadn't been ready before Merrick left on his mission to rescue Raisa. Up at the helm, Captain Merrick wrestled with the wheel and levers, urging the little airship to greater speed and height. But the volatile winds above Valais fought him at every turn, buffeting them from side to side and making it hard to control their course. "Reef the sails!" Merrick shouted. The crew hastened to obey, and Graydon moved to lend a hand. The airship fairly leaped forward, the shortened sails now allowing them to better slice through the wind gusts. Below, Graydon knew, Wynne was working feverishly in the engine room, doing his best to coax every possible bit of speed out of the airship. The driving rain stung as it hit the unprotected portions of his face and arms. He had not had time to bind or cover the shrapnel-induced cuts on his face, courtesy of the cinder blast hitting the ground next to him as they fled the Aegeum shipyards, and the water burned as it washed over the wounds.
"We can't outrun them, Captain,"
Oleg shouted.
"not while we're stuck in these winds."
"Then we'll have to go down and outmaneuver them," Merrick gritted out. "I'll need someone at the prow to keep an eye forward."
"I'll do it,"
Graydon called, already halfway to the front of the ship.
Right on. Just brings the story to life. But let's go back a little bit, because something you said in the introduction, talking about narrating 50 books a year. So now I'm thinking all the characters that those books must contain. But let's go back. I want to hear a little bit about your story of moving into narrating books and doing this as your profession. Where does that come from? What kind of decisions were behind that? And tell us a little bit of your story getting into doing these audiobook narrations.
Okay, that's perfect. So the theme of you guys, whatever this is, podcast.
Who knows?
It fits very well with how I got into it, because you go back. I took drama all through high school. Had a very good drama teacher who gave us a pretty good, solid foundation in things like the International Phonetic Alphabet and accents and 12 guideposts for acting and that kind of thing. And then for the next 20 years, I thought I had wasted 3 years or 6 semesters of high school, because I wasn't doing anything with it. But other than through that whole time, from the time my wife and I got engaged, I started reading aloud. I mean, she and I both read aloud to each other. But then when our kids started arriving, probably when the oldest, who is now 23, when she was about 5, we started moving beyond just, the picture books and started reading novels every night, and I would give them voice. And I mean, we've probably read Chronicles of Narnia at least 3 times as a family. We've read up through Harry Potter 4. You get beyond that and it gets a little dark, and it's like you got to wait until you're such and such age to do it. But I've read Jane Eyre to them. I've read all kinds of things. Read Lord of the Rings, and the more that I was doing it, the more I was adding characterization. It was probably mid 2000s to late 2000s that I first started thinking this would be a really fun thing to do as a career. But it was just a thought then. Fast forward to 2018. It was like the day before my birthday or something, and my wife said, "Hey, check out this website, acx.com. You can audition for audiobooks." And so I got a cheap mic, and I started auditioning, and I got cast for 2 really lousy books in English, and that have been since removed for like fraud.
Oh no.
It's okay. But my experience there, then I was able to approach a local author who we had read some of his stuff, and I've narrated now like 6 books for him. And fast forward to 2020, I quit my day job. I part of what enabled me to quit my day job was seeing I have a particular niche that I narrate a whole lot in, which fantasy is one of those. But the niche that made me go, I can do this for a career, and it has been working, especially focusing on that niche, is Jane Austen fanfic.
Oh,
Really?
cool.
Really?
So when I got cast for Pemberley, Mr. Darcy's Dragon, the first of Jane Austen's Dragon series, when I started seeing sales come in from that, and then I did the next couple and whatever, I'm like, I can make this work. And I started crunching numbers, and I quit a year after I got that gig. And this summer I narrated the 15th book in that series.
Wow.
Her original plan was just the 3 books.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, it was partially the success of it. But since that time, I've narrated more than 60 just in that niche, which
Okay.
I've probably narrated about that many in fantasy and sci-fi and whatever too. But there's about maybe a dozen of us narrators who are consistent standbys for the Jane Austen fanfic, and I'm proudly one of them.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. What was that in terms of when you realized, man, I can do this full time and make this work? Uh, Moving from whatever you had been doing as a career before that, was that exciting, terrifying, a little bit of both?
It
And how has that process been, just in terms of like, just to be able to say, wow, like, do you ever pinch yourself and be like, man, this is what I can do now every day?
quite frequently.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
It was partially I had enjoyed my last job. I was working for a magazine company, but
Awesome.
things were changing and the magazine company was shrinking and they were doing different things and I started seeing the writing on the wall there and I was narrating more and more and it was a bit of a no-brainer, honestly. And
Yeah.
it did take a couple of years after I quit to reach what my income had been, but now I'm consistently past whatever I made at any previous job. So,
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
so much less stress.
That's
I believe
fantastic.
it. Yeah, no, it's well, it requires some courage, because I'm sure stepping into the unknown a little bit, but it's inspiring. Like whenever I hear a story of someone who is able to do that, to be able to take that step and to go through, because I'm sure there's a period of time where it's not, where you almost have to maybe take a step back, or where, like you said, those first two experiences, which I think is great. Probably not necessarily at the time, but it just adds to that story.
Well,
Um,
honestly, narrators who start through ACX, almost all of them have a pretty similar beginning that it's like I got cast for something that I really shouldn't have even done, that was just absolute garbage. Um,
but I'm sure in the moment,
it's a
when
matter of it gets on your resume
for
and you can
sure,
Right.
for sure.
Right.
And
so
when you're starting out, there's a little bit of I've told people this, even with a little bit of my film journey. There's a bit of desperation at the start. I don't know if it's always desperation, but it's just like, hey, you take anything that comes in, to where I've had projects where I'm out, filming a septic company, doing what septic companies do, and just thinking, this isn't exactly what my
it's
dream
not so
is,
glamorous.
but I believe that it's at least on the right ladder. Uh, but I want to hear a little
Yeah.
bit more about, because I was thinking about this the other day. We're in the middle of, speaking of the Harry Potter series and reading that to your children. We're in the middle of the Harry Potter series, and I agree. After book 4, it gets a little darker. The good thing has been is that it has taken us about 11 years to get to book 4. So by the time we're now almost done with book 7, but I feel like my kids are kind of able to handle it. But I'm actually to the point now to where, and I've loved the series, but the Harry Potter series is incredibly long. Uh, I think it might be the longest series that we'll try to tackle in terms of number of pages. But I was thinking about that as I was reading through the story, and for whatever reason, of all the series that we've read, I have kind of read this entire series in as close to what I can do in. I've read almost the entire thing in like a British accent, because it
Mhm.
just feels like it has to be that way. And I feel like, because I had seen the movies before the books, I try to almost emulate the characters from the movies as much as I can in terms of their voices. But it's very difficult
So
to do.
Dumbledore changed
He
from
did.
book 2 to book
He got a
3.
little. He got a little gruffer, and his whispers are not as subtle. Um, so yes, exactly, exactly. He was a much. Anyways, yes, agreed. But tell me a little bit about that, because it's a big part of what we do in Stormcave. Tell me a little bit about the experience of reading these stories aloud to your kids, and when you made this shift. Were they excited, because now, like, all of these stories, the way you have told them to your children and the way you have brought them to life, are they excited about the idea that, man, now you're doing the same thing for well, really, probably a global audience now?
Yeah, and it's cool. So in reading aloud to my kids, Janelle's first series that I did, the Minstrel song series, that one I had already narrated the first one, and we take turns picking what book we're going to read as a family. And it got to be my pick. And I'm like, this is a pretty awesome book. The kids would love this. So I read it to them. And then it's, since then, when it was my pick, we got a little bit into the Turrim Archive, I picked the first book, and my second son, who he just turned 12, he absolutely loved it, and he wants to name one of his sons Dalmir, and
Yes, that's
and
awesome.
Jenelle actually sent a signed copy of the set for him, and he was over the moon.
Oh,
So,
That's
yay.
awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome.
But anyway, where was I? So it's something where I don't read I certainly don't read all the books that I narrate to my kids, but these books are so storyteller rich, and the Janelle's characters, um, I can connect with them emotionally on a level that I don't with many other authors at all. They're just they seem like real people to me,
Hmm.
and it draws on experiences from my life when I'm narrating them, and it it's an incredible sense of empathy that it develops as I'm narrating it to them. So as I'm reading, and you asked about what do I go by, like narrator or performer? What I don't care what people call me. You can call me a reader for all you want, but I do perform it. If somebody's
Yeah.
looking for what they call a straight read, I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I've had a couple of books that I got cast for, and when I recorded the first 15 minutes, they're like, "Oh, dial it back," and I dialed it back a little bit. And oh, dial it. I'm like, "This isn't going to work.
Hmm.
You want
Oh,
a different narrator than me,"
yeah.
and so, which is fine. I'm like, if you don't want my storytelling style, I can only change it so much.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's
Meanwhile, I'm like,
fantastic.
yes, use that crash of thunder.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of that, especially, uh, and I want to hear a little bit about how your process has changed when you said, you bought the mic and for those first books to the production that you're creating now. I think of the Minstrel song series and how you bring that to life, and especially I'm thinking the way you voice the dragons is incredible, and I don't know how you do that, but just the way you bring the whole world to
I
life,
love
and
the
adding
dragons.
music. And can you tell us a little bit about how your production of these stories goes, and from everything from character development to like figuring out, hey, what is this character's voice going to be,
Mhm.
to how you produce, you know the different voices like the dragons, to how just your production in general has changed from
Mhm.
those first couple books.
So I initially was doing recording and where, if I made a mistake, I snapped my fingers and I just kept recording. I now do punch and roll, which saves a whole lot of time. It's a little bit longer in the actual recording process because I stop, I go back to the beginning of that sentence, and then I it plays the 5 seconds before, and I just jump in.
Hmm.
Um, but on the production side of things, actually, when they cast me for King's Warrior, Jenelle and her husband were like, "But you need a better mic," which I had upgraded since the really cheap mic. But that was part of how they paid me, was they got me the mic I'm still using now.
Wow.
Um, and so that was part of it. Janelle also, my working with her has helped in the character development. So when I auditioned for King's Warrior, one of the things in the little blurb about it said there are 67 characters in it. And I was just like, sweet.
I didn't
Because
think anybody was
I
going to
love
audition.
I love doing different characters. There's little subtle differences, and sometimes some characters are going to sound the same. And I've had reviews sometimes where people have said, "Oh, his female characters sound the same." I'm like, okay, well, maybe your ears just aren't right or something. But it's a subjective thing, I suppose. But so it's with Janelle. She gave me like an Excel file with all of the characters and with kind of a description of, nationality, or, what if they were on Earth, like what nation they might be from for accent, and sometimes even like a YouTube clip of, kind of like this actor. I
Hmm.
don't do exact impressions, at least not very often. But it gives me a starting place. And eventually that character just gets its own voice in my head, and I produce that. Sometimes it's a matter of I approach the mic differently for one character or another. One thing that I figured out not too far into my recording career is just mic placement for if a character is thinking versus if a character is saying something out loud. So it's like if it's in their head, I just get really close to the mic and I bring my
Hmm.
my personal volume down, and it changes the sonic quality of it to where it's like, okay, this is going on in their head.
Hmm.
On dragons, so in the Jane Austen's Dragon series, when I auditioned for it, I put all kinds of effects to change my voice and whatever in it. I never did that for anything other than that, but I've had to keep doing that through all of that, which there's some cool things about it. So in that series, you have everything from fairy dragons, which are like this size, and I do them in falsetto, and but then on top of the falsetto, I speed it up by 30%.
That's awesome.
I was trying to figure out how you did that.
It's
I've listened to all 15
and,
of them, so they're
and
fantastic.
those same those same series, the bigger dragons, I initially, Longborn, he's hulking, cantankerous wyvern, and but I slowed them down like 10%.
Oh.
Now I've kind of figured out, rather than adding that much to it, if there's a dragon, I just use my own voice, but I still do it's embodying, thinking the whole mass and girth of this dragon. Or if it's a little dragon, like there's one, the most recent one, there's a dragon that he's basically a pug, and so I was snorting and whatever while I was doing him, and he was an interesting character. But I mean, some of my personal heroes for my whole life, before I ever thought I would be like a voice actor, was Mel Blanc and Jim Henson, and I find them amazing. Actually, Lorene, my wife, and I were talking. It's like it's getting to the point where I really probably should move on to the next level and bring some more best practices into play, where there's a lot of narrators who it's like, when you record an audiobook, you record like a sentence for each character, so you have that reference, and I haven't done that. Usually it doesn't take too long, but it would be a best practice for me to do that. But also, just the thought. So Mel Blanc he had like 1,500 unique character voices that he had come up with in his life. And I've thought about doing something like that, because like, especially in that's one thing that's nice about doing the Jane Austen series. And like, my Darcy is always Darcy, my Elizabeth is always Elizabeth, my Colonel Fitzwilliam is always the same. But it's but if I have, these are my character slots, then if I, working with a new author, I can say, okay, well, this is the voice that I'm thinking and whatever. So that's kind of my next step, but I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, no, incredible. To be able to jump back and forth. It's almost, we went and saw a ventriloquist recently, and when they do it to where it's like they've got 2 or 3 puppets going at the same time and their interactions, it's what it feels like. It's to be able to jump back and forth between characters in a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's incredible, because like I said, as I'm reading to my kids, many times they'll correct me and be like, Dad, you just that was Hermione who just said that, and you were using Ron's voice. It's like, oh, whatever. Like, you guys figured it out.
There are times when the dialogue tag in a book isn't specific, and I have to guess. And I mean, part of it is preparation and whatever, but sometimes it's just like, okay, I think it's this character. When it's it's a 4-character conversation and they don't say which one's saying it, I'm like, well, this seems more like this character. But it's also, a lot of times I'll read a line, I'm like, oh crap, that was the wrong one, so I do a retake.
I'm also curious, Jenelle, if you could speak a little bit about this before I've got some other questions, but maybe talk a little bit about just that whole experience as an author, as you're bringing your story and wanting to move it into an audiobook format. Oh, there we go. Just that process of, what was that first step? What did that look like for King's Warrior, the first book that you had turned into an audiobook? I remember talking for years about how, man, it would be so cool to have these as an audiobook, and just how, like, what that would look like. And I remember, I think it was when we were I believe it was one of the years that we drove to Chestnut Mountain Lodge, because we got them in, it was like in a wood box. It was like 12 cassette tapes, and it was like Lord of the Rings audiobook, but it was the first audiobook that I'd ever heard that had, I think they had like a cast of characters, but it was just like, wow, it was, it might even have been before well, it was before the movies came out. And so it was just, it was, it was the first time experiencing that in almost like a production. But just kind of talk about like where that idea from, oh man, it would be cool to turn my book into an audiobook, all the way through that journey of, you know, finding Benjamin and like what that process looked like, what that looked like working together. And now, you know, you're taking your story and now you're handing it off to someone, and like I said, it's almost two different experiences. I've read the books and I've listened to the audiobooks, and it's the same story, but it's a different experience, and it's really cool. But maybe could you talk about that whole process a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like you, I grew up listening to Adventures in Odyssey and the focus on the family productions of the Chronicles of Narnia, which is more of an audio drama, and then also things like The Endurance, which is just a straight read. There's no, you know, there's really no voices in a book like The Endurance. But so and I love reading out loud myself. And Hank the Cowdog was also another huge staple in my childhood listening experience. And so I always kind of had this dream of actually narrating my books myself, until I started to realize just how much time that would take, and then I wouldn't get any writing done, or homeschooling, or probably anything. So yeah, about 2020, I was getting ready to publish Echo of the Fae, and I was starting to think, okay, let's do audiobooks. And I don't know what that process is, but I have other author friends who, you know, kind of pointed me at ACX and said, oh, you can just put all sorts of information in there. And so I remember like I was putting the information in, and there was this box for like extra information. And so I reached out to my friends. I was like, okay, if you're a narrator or if you've done audiobooks, what do you put in this box? And they were like, well, how long the books are, how you plan to promote it, how many characters there are who speak. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's when I started counting and realized that there were 60 to 70 speaking parts in this book. And I was like, oh, nobody is going to audition. Not one person. Nobody's going to want to do this. There's 4 of these books. They are long books. I didn't realize how long they were until I started thinking about narrating. And but I put it out there, and I got 3 auditions. And one of them was Benjamin's. And at the end of your audition, you like recorded a personal note telling me how much you wanted to read these books, how much you enjoyed the samples, and how much they reminded you of the Chronicles of Prydain, which was, you know, flattery will get you the job, because I was like, oh, Chronicles of Prydain is like one of my favorites, and that's such a huge honor. But also your voice was fantastic, and you were reading, you know, the characters, and I had put like specific segments and said, you know, really got to get Kieran Kane right, because even though he's kind of a minor character in book 1, he's the character. So and you just nailed him. And so that was kind of where we started. And you weren't scared about the fact that this series is 500,000 words or has 1 billion speaking parts. And so yeah, it was very easy actually. Working with Benjamin, with you, really made it very easy on me, because you knew what you were doing, or at least you made it sound like you knew what you were doing. I know it was early on in your process, but yeah, it was super fun. So.
Oh, I don't want to cut you off, but I wanted to go back to something you just mentioned where you were talking with Kieran Kane. It reminded me, there's a story, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but there's a story that says Alan Rickman, who played Professor Snape, wanted to leave the series after the 2nd or the 3rd movie, and that J.K. Rowling sat down with him, because I don't know, I can't remember if I think the movies were being produced before the series was complete. And yes, she sat down with him and kind of gave him insight into the character and where it was going. And so he wanted
this is
to
why
continue.
Your character's such a jerk.
Yeah, right. but it gave him this insight. And what's funny is, it's actually, I think, spectacular, is there's a nuance that he plays to the character in a lot of ways, in terms of he's a villain throughout the series, but he's one of my favorite characters even before I knew what was, you know, what was coming. And so I was curious, as in that process, when you're talking with Benjamin about certain
Mhm.
characters, or specifically Kiernan, where I
Yeah.
remember meeting Kiernan for the first time when you were, you know, writing that story a chapter at a time, and you don't get any real insight into who he really is as a
Yeah.
character. And so what kind of insights do you bring to where you say, hey, as you start, like, do you say, hey, this is like kind of the broad picture of this character's arc, to
Uh-huh.
where it give any of those kind of insights? Uh, can you talk a little
With
bit more
with
about that?
Kiernan, there was, I remember, I feel like we talked on the phone at one point,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, because there was one part, and I think it might have been in book 3, and I was like, okay, you have to know, you just, as the narrator, have to know who this character is, because there was a part where I was trying to explain it, and I was not doing a good job, and so I was just like, okay, I have to call you, and I have to just tell you what happens with this character and who he is. And then, that helped. But yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm sorry, but spoilers, like, here's who this character is and who he ends up
I
being.
think I asked for the spoiler.
I think so too. Yeah.
If I recall, I asked for the spoiler because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there's something with this character that I need to know what
Yeah.
his end game is.
Yeah.
Does
So,
that change things for you, Benjamin? Like, if, let's say, you're reading a line where there's a
mhm,
character like Kiernan, who he may say something that the person he's talking to and the audience are
mhm.
going to take a certain way, but that will be revealed as different later in the story.
He
Does
has
that
much different
change?
motivation.
Does that
Yeah.
does that change how you read a line, or how you uh do you read the entire book before you narrate it, or are you, like, that's the other thing, is when I'm reading a book, there's many times where I'll
90% of
read
the
something.
time.
What's that?
90% of the time I do.
Okay.
There's sometimes on nonfiction I don't. And to be perfectly honest, the fifth book here, I launched into recording it before I had finished the end of it. My initial read through on that, I didn't want spoilers for the last book, so my initial read through was completely to my family.
That's
And
awesome.
I finished recording it to them one day, and I finished narrating it to them one day, and I finished recording it about 3 or 4 days later.
Nice.
So, but yeah, it's something where there are times when, especially in like a longer series, where it's like I need to know what's going to happen with this character in
Mhm.
order to voice them right. It's like I said about her characters in particular, they're very real people to me. It's like Second Son. I love I don't remember his name because it's been so long, but Brant's brother.
Oh,
Uh,
Shamus or
yeah,
Kai.
I
Kai
love
slash Shamus.
his depth. It's still. I mean, I can still remember like the narrating the scene where he has his like final breakdown, and it was like
Mm.
just it was a very visceral scene to narrate,
Mhm.
but it was also very cathartic. It's like I'm feeling everything here. Mhm.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we've talked about, and this would be just even beyond this, like, the importance of stories and the importance of what you're doing, because I think we are big believers in the importance of stories and sharing stories and their power to inspire and encourage and embolden, and to share ideas and to change minds. There's so many beautiful, powerful, the way a story can communicate an idea in a way that you can feel it, like you were just talking about. I just think it's really important. And I would love to hear some of the stories. You were talking about some of your heroes, or the people that important influences in your life. But what about, as you were reading stories to your family? You mentioned a few of them, but just the importance of stories, and the stories that mean the most to you, both in terms of just reading for yourself, but also uh, the ones that meant the most reading to your family.
Well, our we have 6 kids, and our oldest, we had tossed around all kinds of names and whatever, but we had also been reading Lord of the Rings, and we were kind of thinking it was probably going to be a boy, and it ended up being a girl, and very shortly after she was born, we came up with Eleanor, Samwise Gamgee's daughter slash the flowers in Lothlorien. And that set a precedent that all of our kids have book names. Um, and they have book names from books that are important to us. So uh, my second kid was Adele from Jane Eyre, though we spell it different because it's actually mom's middle name too. But then my third son is Ransom from
The
the
space trilogy.
out of the Silent Planet, and then Tallulah Rose. That's kind of right. That's about the most common of them. Is we the year before she was born, my grandparents died, and one of the things I got from their house was a copy of Eight Cousins, and Rose is the main character in Eight Cousins. Then at that point, our kids were old enough that they were when our fifth kid came along, we read The Lost Prince by Francis Hodgson Burnett, and it was like he was probably the only kid who was probably named before we met him because the whole family was like, Marco, yeah, this is Marco. And it's I've narrated that book since, and
cool.
and then our youngest is Atticus, and pretty much everybody knows where that one came from.
Yeah.
So yeah, the connection with books and giving my kids a very special connection with books has been very important to me. So it's something where, like, when I ask my parents why they named me what they did, they're like, oh, we just kind of like the name, and I wanted my kids' names to be more important. So that's what we did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You could just, pull a Brian Regan. You were named after Thomas Jefferson. My name is Brian Joseph Regan. Yes,
Yeah.
you were named
Yeah.
after Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. I was like,
I've used that same joke many times.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
I was named after Julius Caesar.
Yes.
So are you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, some of our, I do not want to speak for you, but I know this is true. Like, some of our favorite memories were the stories that we shared growing up, whether it was watching movies on Friday nights or reading books almost every night, or reading on our own, or listening to audiobooks in the car. And I think Hank the Cowdog might have been, that's probably the first one that stands out in my mind, that you mentioned.
I read that one to my kids too.
I love that.
I love it.
Hank.
Just a worthless coyote.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my leg.
My leg, Hank. Give me just 3 more chances. But it's been really fun introducing my kids to some of the, we have it's not a hard and fast rule, but we're constantly, because my boys especially, they want to see all the new cool movies that have come out, and so I'm always trying to balance, like, okay, one week we'll watch a newer movie, and then the next week we'll do like a throwback movie. So 2 weeks ago, on Jenelle, on your recommendation, we watched that newer Transformers cartoon, which is unbelievable. It's amazing.
It's awesome.
It's a great story. But then this last weekend we watched Sea Gypsies for the first time, and I'm always like, kind of like watching the movie, watching them, because you're watching this movie from the 1970s probably, and very, very cheesy, but just wonderful at the same time. And so it's been really fun to share with them some of these stories that we love. So yeah, I agree. And obviously, Jenelle, I think the idea of naming children after these stories that have such a deep connection with us, I think that probably resonates with you.
Well, all of my children have middle names from Lord of the Rings, so yes.
And some of them have names from your own books, don't they?
That is true. Both of my boys are named after characters that I wrote, and they were named after I named the characters that I wrote, because I used all my favorite boy names in my books. So
it works.
What can you do?
So, yeah, it's you mentioned throwback movies. My family loves old movies, and some of them are cheesy, some of them are not. But another one of my absolute heroes is Danny Kaye and like Court Jester.
Oh yes.
Yes,
Court Jester is to me the perfect movie.
it is.
The
My
pinnacle of cinematic experience. I agree
my
wholeheartedly.
my oldest son has a life/career goal to uh, get it produced as a stage play.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So,
I will be first in line. So when he's
oh
ready,
yeah,
he's got one ticket sold.
There you go. Oh, that's
Well,
fun.
let's what about movies or stories? What would we've talked about this recently, but I'm always interested to hear other people's ideas. We talked recently about like the perfect movie, which is obviously extremely subjective. But what are some of your personal favorite movies? Let's do movies.
well, Court Jester's one. I have a few that are like some more obscure ones and some not so. I I like movies that also, are very melancholy in some ways. Like I love Gattaca.
Okay.
Mm.
Uh, Life is Beautiful. I
Oh,
adore that one. My wife won't watch it because she hates the end. I'm like, no,
yeah.
but he helped his son be able to, anyway. So
Yeah,
Life is
heartbreakingly
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Um, I'm an extreme Trekkie, so pretty much all the Star Trek movies, except for a couple of them. But of the Star Trek movies, the one that to me is like cinematically perfect is Star Trek 6. So
Mm.
Which one
it's
is that?
that's the one where it's Undiscovered Country. It's the one with the Klingons, and it was actually the first one that I saw in theaters.
Okay,
Wow.
cool.
And it's got Christopher Plummer as General Chang, Klingon with an eye patch nailed to
Oh,
his face,
yes. Okay.
and he's Christopher Plummer's superb. But anyway, so it's a much different tone than any of the other Star Trek movies, but it's like cinematic perfection. Anyway,
Mm.
Okay,
trying to think.
cool.
Oh, then I have this other, kind of niche of movies that I find weirdly inspiring. That I'm sure there was some element of them really wanting to inspire people, but it's also like, huh? And movies like Joe versus the Volcano, uh,
Yes.
the Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I love
Yes.
both of them, but the new one with Ben Stiller,
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
it's like it
Perfect.
leaves you at the end going, I need to go out and do something exciting.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Secondhand Lions,
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
man. Your
and
list is perfect so far. 10 of
yeah,
10. No
I'm
notes.
I know there was another one that we added to that I watched in the last year that I found pretty amazing, but I don't remember what it was. But we also love like all the Studio Ghibli movies.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Some of them are some the darker, weirder ones are kind of weird. But although I really love Nausicaa,
I haven't seen
it's
that one yet.
it was actually before it was Studio Ghibli. It was like the first one they
Oh,
did,
okay.
and
Cool.
it has, I mean, in voice actors, at least in the American dub version, it has Patrick Stewart, it has Mark Hamill.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
Well, that
so
would be another interesting question. So, first of all, that list is perfect. I love that you referred to Joe versus the volcano as inspiring, being the adjective that you use for that movie, because I love that. But what about either animated films or audiobooks? Do you have like, oh, this voice actor, like in terms of, and you mentioned someone like a Jim Henson in terms of people that you looked up to or admired, but do you have other people in probably in the vein of your profession that you're like, man,
yeah,
I admire that person's work?
people who are still active in things like Mark Hamill does. It wasn't until in the last 10-15 years that I realized how much voice work he does.
Hmm.
And it's ridiculous the amount of stuff that he does that it's like that's Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he was the bear in Wild Robot.
Oh
Uh,
wow, I
Oh,
didn't know that.
really?
yeah, yeah, and he
Oh,
was
goodness. Yeah.
in the TV series for How to Train Your Dragon. He was Alvin the Terrible.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and
Oh, we're watching that right now. I'm gonna have
yeah,
to
we
listen.
we love How to Train Your Dragon. Um,
Yeah.
so
Well, and
anyway,
he was the Joker
yeah, he
in
was the
the
Joker.
Batman series. He
And
was Emperor oh, what's the guy's name? Zuko's father in
Yeah.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No,
Uh,
no Fire
Ozai,
Ozai.
Fire Lord
You're not
Ozai.
wearing any pants. Yeah,
Yep.
it's
And he
uh,
did
uh,
some audiobooks too. He did
yeah,
he narrated the Spiderwick Chronicles,
yeah,
which you can only get those in with his voice through the library now.
yeah.
So we had to go rent those. But yeah.
So yeah, there's all kinds of like it's it was probably about a year into my narration that I was on like Reddit on some forum, and like I could submit myself as I'm a Redditor who is also a narrator, and on the list there was only about a dozen people. One of them was Will Wheaton. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
dude, I'm I have arrived.
You have arrived.
And
Right there with
and
Will Wheaton.
you know,
Yeah.
I will say Will Wheaton doesn't do an enormous amount of characterization in his, and it's just
Yeah.
different narrators do different things. But
Yeah.
I love listening to all kinds of different productions. Like the guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy who does most of Brandon Sanderson's books.
Mhm.
I love his narration. I can't stand it at like normal speed though. I,
Oh.
I I think he sounds great at double, and the performance holds up. And honestly, whenever anybody gets on about the, well, you can't listen that fast. You're not. It's a matter of it depends on the listener.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
for me and for a couple of my kids at least, who we are audio learners, it's there are times when I've sped up an audiobook to triple speed, and
Oh, wow.
a good performance will
Mhm.
still hold up at
Yeah.
that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's no different than, I mean, my wife can read so much faster than I can, just like physically reading.
Mhm.
And I'm like, how do you retain it? It's the
Mhm.
same thing,
Yeah.
Hmm.
just different medium.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. I have a friend who he's waiting for book 5, and he listens mostly, almost exclusively listens to audiobooks, and he listens to them on double speed. And I'm like, I don't understand that. There are some, that I'll speed up to like 1.25, but and again, and I read very fast, so I don't know why the listening experience. It's not as much fun for me
It's
if I speed it up too much. But yeah,
we all have a different kind of learning, and whether it's
yeah,
audio, visual, whatever.
yeah. But I
Kinetic.
also tend to listen to audiobooks trying to fall asleep. So if I speed it up too much, it's too intense. So
I think for me it would depend. I was because I've certainly had books where I've sped it up, and I think for me it depends on, am I just trying to accumulate knowledge, or it reminds me of the movie Master and Commander.
mm,
It's one of my absolute favorite movies, but I kind of have to be in the
That's
right
a freaking
mood.
cool movie too.
Yeah, I have to be in the right mood to watch it, because it's slow isn't the right word, but it drops you into this
It's
world.
epic.
yeah,
And yeah, epic. Yeah.
yeah.
And real. And you feel, of all the movies I've seen, it's the one where you feel like, man, I just feel like I'm literally like stepping into that
Mhm.
time.
I
And
love the soundtrack to that too. The
oh
the
my
music they
Yeah.
goodness.
picked for it is just
Yeah, I was watching a meme the other day, and I can't remember. I wish I could think of the composer's name who wrote the song that Paul Bettany and Russell Crowe has said the hardest thing he's ever done was learning how to play the violin for that
tell
movie.
them on,
Yeah, yes.
Mm.
And so they're just the meme is like,
tell them on.
imagine being in that time period and sitting down and him dropping just this fire song, and yeah, it's beautiful.
I
And
before you started talking about it, I had it in my head.
really,
And like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. And so that's one of the things I
so
love the way you read Janelle's stories is it takes its time. It takes, it's not trying to just read through it. It's dropping you into this
Mhm.
world. And we've talked about it before, like the first Harry Potter, the Fellowship of the Ring, these movies where you're an hour and a half into it before any plot begins. It's just, here's this character and here's this character, and like you're learning about this world, and it's being fleshed out. And uh I know lots of people have said, oh, like I like the Two Towers or the last one better because it gets into the action. Of course I love the action and I love the epic battle scenes, but I feel like they matter because by the time you get to them, you know and love these characters. And I was reading
Yeah.
something just recently. They were talking to an actor who was saying a lot of that he said the first thing you do on a Netflix film is you cut the first act. They said that's the first thing they do in their movies because the audiences today are usually watching it with something else in the background. So we have to get right into the action. And I think with good storytelling, we almost have to train. I was thinking that with my kids. It's like I want them to be trained to be able to understand, the power of taking in a story, not just telling the story, but being able to, go on this journey and the importance of that first act to where that battle, that moment, those things don't mean anything if you don't care about the characters and the journey that they're on. And so I just love that in the way you read your stories. Is it's not plowing through, it's literally dropping you into these moments, and there's times where the story's moving fast and there's times where it's just like a quiet moment, and the way you're able to do that is it's really powerful. And it makes you, they say in filmmaking, you're trying to deliver a feeling, and yeah, you do that. I was wondering if you were talking about that, like when you were reading the Minstrel song series and empathizing with characters. They were talking to, I think it's Adam Driver, and they were asking him as he's doing some of these movies that he does, and like if he's feeling the emotion of the character, and he says, well, he's like, in the moment, like when I'm doing this, he's like, it's not my job to feel what the character's feeling. It's my job to make the audience feel what they're supposed to feel. So that's what I'm focusing on. But when you made that comment, I wonder, like, as you're reading, are you thinking about like, oh, how does this make me feel? Or are you thinking about like, this is the feeling I'm trying to get delivered to the audience? Or is it just that this just comes through like a natural flow, like poetry in motion? Or is there any thought process to what are we trying to deliver to the audience?
Um, when a scene is flowing really well, um, I'm gonna have less retakes,
Hmm.
and the emotion is there, and it's, I don't know, it's somewhere between my own. It's kind of a mix of all three of those: my own emotion and what the character is feeling, and what I'm hoping that I can help the listeners feel as well. Um, you mentioned some stuff about pacing too, and if you listen to like the first, oh, probably dozen audiobooks I did or so at least, my pacing is so much faster than it is now.
Hmm.
And it's especially this series of books, the Turrim Archive, there are some scenes with Downmere where he's like particularly thoughtful. There are times when there's you're waiting for the hammer to drop, and I'm like slowing down the set because it just needs that weight. And then there
Hmm.
you get to the action scenes, and it's then my pace picks up.
Hmm.
And so I just narrated a two-book Jane Austen fanfic series thing with where it's the Bennett sisters are actually secretly bandits, and
Yes.
Nice.
it was a cool series. So and the first book I did, it was a dual narration. So the chapters from Darcy's perspective I narrated, and the chapters from Lizzie's perspective, Carol Beth Anderson narrated. And then the second book, they add a third perspective from Lydia.
Mm.
My 13-year-old daughter did those chapters.
Oh,
Oh,
serious.
And
fun.
for a 13-year-old, she did pretty darn good.
Hmm.
But she suffers from it's just starting out, and I can't tell you how many times when we were recording, I'm like, slow it down. But if you listen to
Hmm.
it, her pace is still really fast, and
Hmm.
she's gotten. There was one kind of awful review that I'm like, can you just keep it to yourself? And another one where she was very encouraging, but it is something where the words just kind of tie in, and
Hmm.
it's newer narrators, especially, nerves are a
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
Even if nobody's there, it's I gotta get it, and
Yep.
it's, if you just take a breath,
Hmm.
and then and it's it is what it is. Actually, we're setting up her closet now as a recording studio so she can start doing some stuff on her own. Actually, I'm gonna have her narrate Eight Cousins. Um,
Uh,
because it's public domain, and
Mm.
I think it'd be good practice for her. And there's no author to say this isn't very good. Though to be fair, Summer Hanford, the gal who wrote those two books, she's like, everybody has to start somewhere, and I love her for it. And I've probably Summer is getting to be one of those authors that I've narrated almost as much as I have for you and for Maria Grace and Peter Walked. It's like the million word mark, and you have surpassed that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah. These two series, it's a million words.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I glanced at my tracking sheet, and it's altogether it's 1,250,000 words that I've narrated for you,
That's crazy.
Wow.
which is awesome.
But
That
it's
is
funny you talking
awesome.
about how fast, because I did a little YouTube video with 'Twas an Evening in Bethlehem, and I wanted to put that on YouTube with the pictures, with me narrating it, kind of as a Christmas gift a couple of years ago to anybody who was interested. And the first couple of takes, and that book is less than 500 words, like, and the first couple of takes, I was talking so fast, and my husband, who is very much an audio snob, was like, okay, you need to calm, which is why he was like, okay, you need a new microphone, because that he is an audio, that's his passion, is audio. And so we were in like the little back room of our church using all of their technology, and he's like got the video camera and all of the stuff, and he's like, okay, you need to calm down, you need to slow down. I was like, yes, I don't know why I'm talking so fast. I don't usually talk this fast. I read to my kids all the time, and they're not like, Mom, slow down. So clearly there's something about getting in front of a microphone that
Yeah.
is
Well, the other
nerve-wracking.
thing, so my daughter, she's another one who listens to things at ridiculously fast speeds. And I in doing, I'm like, okay, you need to listen to a few things at normal speed and realize there's space. Let there be space. You need space.
So you have actually started turning this into a fairly large family endeavor. I know that, like, for my books, your wife has written some music and played some music, which is wonderful. And you have sung some of the songs that I wrote. How many of your family members are involved in the audiobook production?
So it's, ebbed and flowed a little bit. For King's, the Minstrel song series, there were several songs in that, and it is not industry standard for narrators to sing in audiobooks. It's actually most coaches and best practices and whatever tell you not to.
Yeah, when you offered to do that, I was like, oh,
yeah,
sure.
But yeah, to me, it's like part of the reason why they do that is because if it's not a public domain song, then you can get sued by whoever owns the rights. But if it's something where the author wrote the words themselves, you can do whatever with it as long as the author is okay with it. And you gave me basically carte blanche to do what I wanted with it. And we had one where there was one part in, I think it was in King's Warrior, where they're in a cave, and they were all singing a song.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I got my son who he's a decent singer. So I had my three oldest kids and my wife. We sang that.
Yeah.
And I think we did music for the opening and closing credits of King's Warrior too, didn't we?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
because I think your wife was playing
violin,
a violin or a lute or something.
Yeah, or
a mandolin. I think she actually played a mandolin, and I was like, seriously, I have like hit the jackpot. Never letting this narrator go.
So that one, it got most of the family involved.
So fun.
My daughter, who just narrated this with me, actually, when I first started, I did a few kids' books, and she narrated the main character's lines. And there was kind of silly little kids' books and whatever. But when she narrated the first one with me, she could not yet read. So I was telling her the lines, and she would then say them, and then I later plugged them in and whatever. But it's fun that it's come this far, and different kids of mine have different ambitions and whatever. I think Marco has said he'd like to. Honestly, if I had thought about it, I don't know that I would have, but in retrospect, I might have asked about having Marco voice Mouse.
Mm.
Mm.
But he, I mean, he would have been much different character almost
Yeah.
if Marco had done it. But
Uh-huh.
I want to find some opportunity where he can do it too, because he's asked.
Cool.
Um, and I mean, my oldest son, he's currently over in Germany, but
Oh, wow.
he's thought about doing it. He's studying music, and he's got some good ambitions and whatever. I don't know what
Mhm.
he's going to do, and I don't know what the rest of us are going to do. But
Yeah.
my oldest daughter's moving back in with us in a couple of weeks here. She's going to be
Cool.
helping me on marketing stuff, which I've tried that 27 times with 27 different people. Most of them have been related to me, and it's usually fallen through. But she's
Yeah. Marketing is
matured a lot
hard.
in the last couple of years, and so she's going to be doing some of my marketing and stuff, and
Cool.
she is going to be doing animation school, Don Bluth Animation School this summer,
Oh, wow.
Okay.
which is
Cool.
part of why we're having her move in. Like, just
Yeah.
come, and we're excited to have her come back. And so yeah, on the music side of things, my wife and or I, we wrote the melodies and whatever, and
Hmm.
the the intro and outro music for Turrim Archive, um, she composed most of it. It's the drum is me.
Okay. Cool. I love it
But
so much.
she's
It's so
she's doing
adventurous
violin.
feeling.
Yeah, I love it too. And there's I've probably sung in at least 10% of the books that I've done. In sometimes it's just like two little lines. I
Mm.
did one I did a World War II Jane Austen variation where um I Mr. Darcy is singing a World War One French song, which is in the public domain.
Okay.
So I'm like, Don, I hope you appreciate that I learned a song in French and performed it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because
That's awesome.
Um,
to me, it's part of the storytelling thing. Like,
yeah.
that's what I love about Lord of the Rings is the poetry and whatever. And
Oh
my brother's
yeah.
like, I hate all the poetry. I'm like,
Yeah.
why? It's
Yeah.
beautiful. There's been a few uh, books of poetry that I've narrated,
Oh,
and
cool.
Oh, really?
not something that I think I would have pursued, but there's a small publisher that I do a lot of stuff with,
Hmm.
and they have a lot of people who submit poetry. And
Hmm.
I auditioned for one. I've probably done, I don't know, 9 or 10 books of poetry now.
Cool.
Mm.
One of the cooler ones that I did was it's an epic poem of like 100 years after Arthur kind of thing. And that was pretty cool. So anyway, it's like The
That's so
Lion of
cool.
Camelot, I think is the name of it. But anyway,
Cool.
That sounds awesome.
Hmm.
When you're narrating, I'm picturing. Well, first I had a thought when you were talking about, you know, the power of a pause, or in an audiobook where everything is sound. Just the power of a moment of silence. And I was thinking of they were talking to um, Sean Connery when they were doing uh, Raider, no, The Last Crusade. And there's a scene where he's in the sidecar in the motorcycle with Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford has dispatched of a few enemies, and he looks at his dad with like a like what I just did. And Sean Connery had a line, and he convinced um, director
Spielberg.
Spielberg that he said, no, it's actually, he's like, I'm just going to give him a look and it will say more than you could say with this line. And in that moment, and in many moments throughout stories, just that power of sometimes that silence, or like you said,
mhm,
when Dahmer is
Hmm.
so thoughtful, so deliberate in, yeah, we live in such a noisy world that sometimes that
Hmm.
silence can be so powerful. But I'm
mhm.
curious, like as your daughter's getting into it, and you mentioned some of that, but if you had more advice or advice that you would give to yourself, even just a couple years ago, getting into this, you know, storytelling, literally profession, do you have other advice that you would give to someone who is interested in getting into doing this kind of work?
Do what you love, and um, realize that some of it is, some of it is going to be hard work, but I don't know. This is weird. Like I like the path that I've taken. Um, it's I could have done with a little more dialect coaching and whatever to begin with. Honestly, it's the best experience for me has been experience.
Mm.
I've now narrated. I probably have narrated a whole lot more in British accents than I have in just American. Now the Turrim one, the narrator voice is American, but
Yep.
then there's other voices. But
yeah. Well, and with Turrim, I remember being not concerned, that's not really the right word, but just kind of maybe apprehensive because you'd done so much in Minstrel's Song with British and a little bit of Irish here and there. And I was like, okay, this is totally different.
Yeah.
And I remember I think you started out with the narrator kind of doing a British accent. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this has to just be American because that's just the way I hear it.
And
And then
Merrick,
also with Merrick being like,
Merrick
I
in
was like, he
particular.
has to be, you have to do as good of a Nathan Fillion voice as you possibly can.
And honestly, that's where it's slotted for the rest of the series for me.
Oh
And
yeah,
for the
it was
whole thing,
fantastic.
I'm thinking, okay, this is he's the captain of the Serenity.
Yes, absolutely. That's who he's modeled after, him and Han Solo.
and-
So
yeah, it's
Well, it really grounds the
I love
story.
so.
Yeah.
Back to Turrim, like I have thoroughly loved this series. It's also something where, it wraps most of it up, but there's also so much that I'm like, I really hope you come back and visit this.
yeah.
Because like, there's part of me that's like, did you write this whole series as an origin story for elves?
Yeah. And dwarfs. Yeah. But not on purpose. That just kind of happened in the middle of book 3.
But yeah, I want more of Yoan and Reza and the whole gang. I want to know what happens. I want to see it in 1,000 years in the future. I want to see it 100 years in the future.
Well, that's good to hear because I do have a sequel series kind of bopping around in there. So
okay, so in reading it to my kids and whatever, and a couple of them. So we went to Oregon about a year ago for spring break, and at that point, I was reading, I think Hearts of Stone and Steel to them, and I was only a couple of chapters in. I'm like, well, let's just listen to it while I'm driving. So, so we did, and then we finished listening to that one, and he's like, "You're cheating."
Like,
but
it's still me.
it was also something where this fall I had a cold that just lasted for I was not recording for quite a while. But we listened to Steal Tomorrow also because I'm like, you guys need to listen to this too. When we were finishing up the 5th book, I started mentioning, and Marco's like, wait, that's in this too? I'm like, yeah, it's 100 years before. Lorcan's, Lorcan's a kid. And
Yep.
And he's like, oh.
Yes. I had one of my daughter's friends is reading the books, and she came up to me at a cross country meet, and she was like, I really want to know what happened to Lorcan. And I was like, well, I mean, it's not a happy story. And so I kind of started telling her, and she was like, oh, okay, don't write that.
Well, if you could do a grim little novella about
it. Yeah. It's dark. So poor guy. Poor kid.
I mean, he's obviously something happened between that time that really screwed him up.
Yes.
And I think it was pretty much Un.
Un and the orb itself. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's see, what was I gonna say? I don't know. So Steal Tomorrow, when we were first talking about this, you're like, okay, I'm going to have you do Orbit the Airship and this one, which is sort of in the series. Right. And it was at that point, I'm like, I was trying to decide what I was going to narrate public domain wise. I'm like, well, I guess I'll do Oliver Twist.
Yeah.
And I got most of it recorded that year, and then it kind of sat aside. I finally published it this January.
Right on.
So it's part of my goal to narrate the complete works of Charles Dickens, which I've got.
Wow.
I've got 1.5 books of his Christmas stuff to do. Well, the complete novels. I'm not going to do his nonfiction stuff because that's boring as. But I love his novels.
Yeah.
So yeah, I published that. I recently also did All Quiet on the Western Front,
Okay.
which
Wow.
I had somebody review it, and he didn't. He felt like my accent wasn't a German accent that I did for it.
Oh.
But that's the thing is when I went into it, I listened to some samples of other
Mhm.
ones that are available on Audible. None of them were done with an accent.
Hmm.
I'm like, he's German, and
Yeah.
Mm.
whether like Germany's a big place.
Yes.
It's not limited to one single accent.
Mm.
Plus,
Right.
I lived with a German for 6 months, and
There you go.
partially modeled my voice on him. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so whether or not it's a German accent,
Right.
it's something. But so that being said, he didn't really like my German accent, but he adored my performance, and I moved him
Mm.
to tears, and I'm like, okay, mission accomplished.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you go. Well, and I'm one of my circle of friends. I'm one of the few who is getting into audio. Well, I'm not just getting into audio. I'm done 11 books now. So, but I love it. Like I love having that medium for, I have friends who just prefer audiobooks and this is the only way they'll ever read them. And, but so I have a lot of authors will ask me questions and, well, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And I'm always like, and why would you do it? And I'm like, well, one, it's a different audience that you're reaching out to, but two, I love the collaboration part of it, and I love hearing your take. And then
Yeah,
Brenna did Echo of the Fae, and just hearing your take on certain things. And one of the things that I love about both you and Brenna is I feel like you read like the whole context of every line, which I've heard, I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, and some narrators are better than others. And some it's like, okay, they're just reading sentence by sentence, but
yeah.
uh,
Well, and it is something where if I read a line
mhm,
and I'm like, that meaning wasn't clear, I
right.
redo
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
It's not just if I mispronounce something
Uh-huh.
or whatever. It's no, that didn't come through right,
Yeah.
Mm.
and I put the emphasis on this word instead of that word,
Yeah.
and it's it changes things
It
entirely
does.
from one emphasis to another.
Yeah. But
Mm.
to hear someone read your words makes them come alive in a way that's different than just reading them and editing them and looking at them on the page. And I love that. I love that collaboration. And there have even been a couple of things where I'm like, oh, that's not necessarily how I would have read it. But then it gets to a point where I'm like, no, but I love that. I love hearing your take on it. Or, like, oh, that may, so sometimes it hits you like differently. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that it could be read a different way. And that's kind of fun too, to just
Yeah.
kind of hear another person's interpretation.
Well,
Have you have you guys
on
heard?
the
Okay.
creative process, it's just fun to have the back and forth also, and it's
Mhm.
like there are just little moments here and there that I'm like, that was just beauty. Like towards the end of this book, there's one decision that you made that I'm with that Raisa makes towards the very end of the book that I don't want to give away spoilers, but I was like, thank you.
Mm.
It was so beautiful that she did not choose to do one thing but chose to do another, and
Oh,
Mm.
now I'm wondering what you're talking about.
You're gonna have to
I'm
go
like,
read the
I'll have to
book,
get
dear
there.
audience.
uh, I can tell you it's about the bowman.
Mm.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So
Hmm.
but I was like that because I was wondering for the whole book. I'm like, are they going to? And then it's just
Yeah.
it's healing.
Oh,
It's healing
good. Oh,
instead of
good.
so yeah.
Yeah. Well, she needed a lot of that, but Eowyn will help her.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's a going back to what you were just talking about, Jenelle. I think I had sent this to you, and I wish I had it in front of me because I would rather just read it because the way it's written is beautiful. I don't know if you have heard this story. I don't know. I don't even know the veracity of the story, but the story is that uh, Tolkien was struggling
Mm,
with doubts or just not thinking that his writing was very good. And then as the story goes, a friend had him over to his house, and he played a clip of one of part of his work in a recording, and I don't even know what that would be on. What would you call it? Like, would that be like a sonogram or what they would
phonograph?
phonograph something? Anyways,
I
he
don't think
played it to
sonograph.
him, and he just said it played the clip of somebody reading something that he had written,
Mm,
and I can't remember exactly the wording of the response, but it was just like it ended, and there was silence, and Tolkien basically just said, I had thought that what I was written was no good, and he said basically, thank you for showing me that it is. And just like you said, that him hearing somebody else reading his words just changed how he felt about it, and just the power of that.
It's things like that. And it's, do I embody that as, I don't know. I know where I'm going, but
Yeah.
but it's characters, be they dragons or be they people or gnomes or whatever. Characters are a part of me, and I am a part of them, and it's a wonderful thing to be a part of.
Who's your favorite character you've ever voiced?
Dalmir is up there.
Oh, well, that's
fantastic.
nice to hear.
This is.
You didn't have to say that.
I didn't have to say that, but it's true. It's and in some ways he sounds a little bit like some of my other wizardy characters, but he is incredibly unique. He's so reluctant to be the hero, and the amount of thought that and the amount of just weight that he carries from hundreds and thousands of years and whatever, and that he shut himself off for so long. It was, when I was reading it to my kids, there were times when all of us were in tears.
Oh.
And there were also times when it's like so the last book, I read them more chapters at once sometimes than I normally do. And there were, bathroom breaks at really bad times.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, Dalmir is one of my favorite. There's a dragon in the most recent Jane Austen's Dragons books named Halfwing, that he's a fairy dragon, but he's a much different fairy dragon than the other fairy dragons in it. And he's also much more thoughtful than any fairy dragon. Yes, he has a high-pitched voice, but it's not as sped up, and he's a little more gruff, but he's also kind of dignified in a way that they don't get in the other ones. And I like doing the thoughtful characters. I and a good villain. a good villain is always the hero of their own story. And I mean, I can do over the top, oily, and whatever, and or hiss and whatever, but it's ultimately the best villains. They're the heroes for themselves. So
they just know that they are right.
Yeah,
I think that's why my dad likes Ericol Nevaeh so much, because Ericol Nevaeh knows he is the hero of the story, and he's just a little bit hurt that nobody else sees it.
I confess, I was disappointed we only had one chapter with Nevaeh.
I know. I kept telling him he had to be part of the story, and he was like, I am staying in my mountain. I am protecting my own. That is what I do. It's like, yeah, you're right. But he had a moment. He had a good moment.
I do love how things are, how you get a little bit of a view of where things are going with these characters at the end of the book. With Baron and Wynn and Graydon.
Oh yeah, Graydon. Yes.
I just said it 40 and all their various things like and when the end of the chapter that I sent you, we laughed.
Yes.
It's like Baron is so unbending.
Yes.
But Lorena and I talked about it, that it's like there's a little bit of self-righteousness in it, but he's so human because of it. Yeah. It's like, he couldn't do politics.
No, nope, not at all.
Because it's too close to piracy.
Yes, exactly. my daughter
Brilliant.
has started reading the book. She's gotten through all four, and she was telling her friends about, like, so some of her friends have read my books, and so she's like, okay, I have to read these so I can talk to my friends about them. And then she was like, oh, I love them. So then she was telling another friend who hasn't read the books about them, and she was like, oh, she's like, you would love Baron. He's like a homeschooled Thor. And I was like, I'm going to use that.
That's awesome.
I
That's
like it.
awesome. One of the things that I don't know that the thought is unique, but we've talked about this before, Jenelle, and I'd be curious your thoughts on it, Benjamin, just because I feel like it would resonate. But for me, like with fantasy, what makes a great fantasy story, because it's set in a fantastical world. It's the characters are fiction, the world is usually fiction, there's things that don't take place. But to me, good fantasy isn't an escape from reality, but it's an escape to what reality could be.
Coping with.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
like Harry Potter has all these magical elements, but the core of the story is the friendship between Ron, Harry, and Hermione. That can be real. Like, we could be those kinds of friends. We could show that kind of courage in the circumstances that present themselves into our lives. And as you were talking about, like the dragons and the way they speak, and like, it's all these fantasy elements, but the core of the story, the heart of the story, are things that could be the courage, the friendship, the honor, the like you talk about that decision that Rice makes. Like, we're faced with those kinds of decisions. Maybe the stakes aren't as high, but for us they are. And I think that for fantasy and for storytelling, that can be the beauty. I think that's what sets a story apart, is those elements that it might not be a true story, but it's real. I think just a lot of things that you've said seem to resonate with that idea.
Grant, I don't know if you're a Deep Space Nine fan, but that's my very favorite episode of DS9, and possibly my favorite episode of Star Trek, is one where Captain Sisko is having this weird dream thing where he's in 1950s, and he's an author, and he's a black author who is being very discriminated against. And at the end of the episode, he's having a breakdown, and because they're pulping his story instead of printing it, and he says, it's real. And that's the thing. Any creation, it's dealing with reality. Yes, it can be an escape from reality, but this is why science fiction and fantasy exists, is to deal with these things sometimes in an oblique way. And right versus wrong, sometimes what is morally gray. I mean, and where do any of us draw a line? And what will you stand for? What will you stand against?
A dear friend of mine and I were talking about it many years ago, just about she doesn't love fantasy and sci-fi. She likes more of like the Hallmark type books, right? And I don't know what you'd call them, but basically if Hallmark movies were books. But one of the things that she mentioned, because her husband loves sci-fi and fantasy, and they talk about the books that they read, and she said, one of the things that she noticed over and over again is that the books she reads, the setting is real and the characters tend to be a little bit more cartoony. She said all of the books he reads, everything is this crazy, nonsensical, it's not real, but the characters, they step off the page. They are real. And I think when you can set people into these crazy scenarios, these crazy worlds, they're on a spaceship, you're time traveling, there's dragons, but then you can focus on the reality of those characters and how they would act. And that's kind of stuck with me for many years. It's like, it's real. The people, the characters in fantasy and sci-fi are what matter.
I do have to say, the beginning of this book, so I started reading it to my kids without reading it at all. And so sometimes, I would stop for commentary, and in the first chapter, you're like, get out the dang letter and read it.
How long is it gonna take? Yeah.
That makes me happy.
It does. It makes me happy too. I have my husband's cousin was in the Air Force, and so he's been reading all of these books out loud to his kids. They backed the Kickstarter, and he calls me because the Kickstarter backers all have their ebooks. And he calls and he's like, I could not get through chapter 1. And I, of course, don't remember what I wrote in anything. I've moved on. And I was like, oh, why? And he goes, the letter. And I was like, oh, right. And he's like, I had to have one of my sons take over for me because I could not see the pages anymore. And I was like, oh.
I loved voicing the letter too.
Yeah.
I didn't serve in the military and whatever, but it's one of those things where you can live lives through books.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
So
that's a powerful statement right there. Well, here's a question. We should probably wrap up here shortly, but I did have a question because I'd be curious. You're talking about narrating some public domain works and obviously bringing in a lot of work. They were talking to Russell Crowe recently because they were asking like films that he wanted to be a part of. He said, I tend to only think about the work that's offered to me. So I'm only choosing from what's offered to me. I don't usually think about like, oh, I wish I could do that project, but I'm not really that way. But I was curious, like, if of works that are already out there, probably already have audiobook versions, is there any book or character that you're like, man, I would have loved to have a crack at that, either because you love the work or because you're like, man, I just like, for any reason, is there like a holy grail, like, man, if I could do that book, that would be awesome.
Some of them I've done.
Yeah, for sure.
So before I got cast for Jane Austen's Dragons, I narrated A Christmas Carol to use partially for my family and friends and whatever, but also to use as a calling card. And I have read A Christmas Carol more than anything else in my lifetime.
Really? Okay. Wow.
And I read it to my kids every year. They know my characterizations for each character. And some of those have changed a little bit. And actually, I have re-recorded A Christmas Carol now. So I've recorded it twice.
Wow.
And both versions are actually available on YouTube at this point. My accent has improved in the second one, but it's also like Ebenezer Scrooge, Jacob Marley, and Dickens in general. I love narrating Dickens, and I love narrating classics. There's a book that I'm going to do sometime this year that does not have an audio book, and it blows my mind. I just found out about it. It was the second best selling American novel of the 19th century. And it doesn't have an audiobook because people like Herman Melville and Nathaniel Hawthorne panned the gal and said this is sentimental nonsense and whatever. I haven't actually read it yet, but I don't care what it is. I'm going to narrate the thing because she was canceled in the 19th century, basically.
Wow.
It's The Lamplighter by Marianne Cummins. I've glanced through the manuscript so far, but it's kind of the next one on my public domain list. But other characters and what I would love to do, I would love to narrate Timothy Zahn's stuff, any of it. But I've tried to reach out to his publisher and whatever, and it's gone nowhere. But I love the strategic, like his books are all about strategy, and there's always some mastermind genius. He's the guy who created Thrawn.
Yes. Yes. I'm currently listening to his new Icarus books. Okay. And I'm picky about narrators. He does have a good narrator.
So the Icarus books, the main character in that, to me, that's Merrick.
Yes,
I would have voiced him the same as Merrick.
Yeah. Yes, I could see that. Yeah, that would be different, but yeah.
I haven't listened to the version
Yeah,
of him. But
yeah.
I've read a couple of those.
Yeah, no, that I'm just saying that it's fun, like hearing like that's your take on that and his take on it. That would be very different. But both would be good. So
he's he's somewhere between the Nathan Fillion
yeah,
and Bruce Boxleitner
yeah,
kind of fella
yeah,
for me.
yeah.
Bruce Boxleitner is another, like him in like Babylon 5.
Mm-hmm.
I use that sometimes as a reference for various characters and
Yeah.
whatever. So I'd love to, narrate Star Trek books, Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
books, whatever. Oh, and this is my 5-year mission. Weird thing that I'm doing is I am translating Pride and Prejudice into the original Klingon, and I will. So
That rocks.
so to begin with, I mean, I'm studying Klingon on Duolingo and whatever. I have all of the various Klingon books, Klingon for the Galactic Traveler,
Yes.
and so I'm eventually going to need a tutor in Klingon, I think, to do this properly. But so initially, I'm taking the story and making it as if it was set on Kronos, and so
Nice.
their motivations are slightly different. Instead of 20,000 a year or whatever, it's he does 5 campaigns a year, and Mrs. Bennett will, I've done the first couple of chapters, kind of a rough draft of the English of the Klingon, and so Bennett is saying things like, this exists more above your ridges than beneath it, things like that, and it's warrior motivation instead of
Yes.
money and whatever.
I
But
love it. Pride and Prejudice and Klingons. I did not see that coming, but it needs to happen.
Well, so Pride and Prejudice and Planets was born out of this. There's a JAF, Jane Austen fan fiction conference of reader writer get together, and that was born out of that a few years ago.
Nice.
And I narrated that when I heard the title of it while it was still a work in progress, and I reached out to Summer Hanford. I'm like, I need to narrate this.
That's awesome.
So it is something where sometimes I am able to pick what I get to do.
That's awesome. I love it.
And there's another one that I keep pestering the author about it, and I think I'll eventually do it. That is Pride and Platypus. Where
Marry the platypus. Sorry.
So the premise of it is something happened, and all of England, all the men turn into some animal every full moon, and Darcy turns into a platypus.
Darcy the platypus. Now I got Phineas and Ferb, and yeah. That's awesome. Okay, well, I think this is going to have to be a 2-parter because wow, we could just talk forever and ever. This has been super fun. Thank you so much for joining us, Benjamin, and to all of our listeners or watchers. Thank you for joining us here in the evening in the Stormcave. Join us next time to come in out of the storm.